about science is that I think especially in physics, as you learn about the universe, we, more than anyone, have great awe and wonder about the universe. If you read Einstein's writings, you'll really see that expressed very eloquently. Because the more you learn about the fantastic, huge, violent, amazing things that go on, in the cosmos, I mean, it's much more spectacular than anything we see here on Earth. Or even when you look at atoms and molecules and how they work, it's all, for a physicist, or for a theoretical physicist, it's like going to a science fiction movie every day. And so you have to, if you believe like that, it draws you don't mind doing the long hours, and with no particular promise of any success or that you get a job later. And, I think that this brings something to religion too, because I think we were talking earlier that science can bring, by understanding so much more about the universe and how amazing it is, and the very strong gravity, what happens with black holes, or the Big Bang, or inflation, or something that's less than the size of a dime, goes to 10 million times the size of the Milky Way. I mean, all these mind-blowing things can bring this kind of awe that inspires religion as well.
And if religion could recover that sense of radical amazement, it would become less bossy.
Yes. In fact, I realized as we've talked, written a book, and as I've understood much more science than I ever did before, because that's how it started, in the culture debate. I think, if anything, science has enriched the magnificence, enriched the wonder, enriched the mystery and awesomeness of God. By God, I mean the mystery of existence. Imagine a Big Bang that happened everywhere. It didn't happen in one place, because, before that there was no space and time. So it happened everywhere. It was present everywhere. That's omnipresence. Imagine something that starts off the size of a dime and now goes to 40 billion light years. That's omnipotence. Imagine precise laws that are uniformly spread out throughout the universe. That's omniscience. No one knows why the laws are there, or why the universe conforms to mathematical truth, which is part of our consciousness but also seems to be there. But we not only discover mathematics, we invent it too. It's in our consciousness and it's also there. So I think the mystery of our existence actually is magnified. And with each scientific discovery, there is more unknown to be explored. And as Leonard and I both agree, there's the known, there's the unknown, and there's also the unknowable because of, not because of technological reasons, but because in principle, there are things that we are precluded from knowing. So, the mystery of our existence humbles us into reverence, which is a religious experience.
I think the thing that you both bring up, though, is the kind of culture in which we live. And you mentioned that science, in terms of the American public, only 45% believe in evolution. You mentioned Stephen Weinberg, Nobel laureate, and his tireless work, and he said, I personally believe that the teaching of modern science is corrosive of religious belief, and I'm all for that. So, I wonder how science helps us with issues of meaning and purpose, apart from bringing us to this sense of amazement. I mean, I think I'm trying to think of a way of saying this that doesn't sound impolite. Science amazement with all that and the technology and so on is helpful. But science seems to me to be dealing with the plumbing of things. How things work. And often is the description masquerading as an explanation. And I wonder, why do you think that science actually explains anything? Or does it describe things driving through Connecticut, and they see a field of cows, and he says to his dad, what are they? And he says, they're cows. And the kid says, why? And it's the why question.
Right, so science explains things at a certain level. Okay, so let's look at what is the purpose of science and how did it evolve. Okay, thousands of years ago, or for as long as I guess people have looked around themselves, they've wondered why certain things happen. Why? I guess I should be careful to use the word why, but they wanted some explanation at some level. Why are there eclipses? What does it mean? Why are there tides? But more importantly, they didn't know things about when the tides come in and out, because that was important, right? And for the fishing and for other reasons. So they used to make up explanations. The why would just be any kind of satisfying explanation, like the eclipses were caused by wolves prancing across the sky, right? And there were religious explanations that to me seem not too different from that, but are still believed today as to how the universe got here and what the nature of the physical universe is. And then eventually we discovered philosophy, which means let's use reason, let's use logic to find answers. And that's, I think, a pretty good approach, but it still doesn't make it, because if you don't check to see what's really going on, then you can philosophize all you want, and everything can hold logically together and still be wrong. It happens a lot in physics. We have beautiful theories that are wrong. So we discovered the scientific method, and the purpose of science is so we call it explain, but really the purpose of science is to predict what's going to happen, and also to predict backwards in time what did happen. And the why is in the sense of, here's our set of equations or theories that when you grind through this mechanical stuff, we will tell you what happens. And we try to make those beautiful in the sense of mathematical elegance, very brief equations in terms of some deep concepts. But really what we're really trying to do is simply to understand what's going to happen next if we set things up this way, or if we observe that things are this way now, where did it come from? Right? And Richard Feynman, who was, of course, an icon in physics, and I had the pleasure of knowing at Caltech many years ago, he was once asked, he was a famous anti-string theorist. Does everyone here know what string theory is? That's pretty common to know these days. So back then it was first being developed, and he was very much against it because it made these predictions that were not physical, like there were more dimensions than we actually observed. And people, though, were very interested in it because it was the promise of being what Einstein called a unified field theory, a theory that encompasses all the forces of nature. And they would go up to Feynman and they'd say, but isn't this great? How can we get string theory? Is this what we should be looking for in physics? Is a theory that unifies all the forces together? And he would get very angry and start yelling, going, I don't know there's such a theory. I'm not for such a theory. Nature will tell us if there's such a theory. We don't tell nature. So what he was saying is we want to describe the world as it is, and not project what we want to see. We don't make philosophical extractions from that. Our job is just to tell you what happens when you throw the particles together, what's behind it, where does it come from, and that's, I think, important to accept that that's okay, and not to make demands and criticize the other. Don't go further beyond that.
It's quite discreet, and in the best sense, humble, modest, and clear about that. But I don't want to do a Richard Dawkins bashing, but people, the militant atheists, don't seem to have any trouble in accepting their own significance. And I'm not, the real why, and that's why we need art and other forms of language, storytelling, narrative, poetry is to try and celebrate. And this is much of what you're saying on your side of the discussion, why people are wonderful and why they matter.
Right. I think there are many ways of knowing. Logic is one way of knowing, observation is another way of knowing. But emotional knowing is different, right? I can't prove to you that my mother loved me, but I know that she did. Okay. There are other questions that science progress. Science doesn't ask the question, who am I? Okay. Talks about the observer, but really does not talk of the observer. And science admits at the moment, anyway, that we have no explanation for consciousness. For consciousness meaning the experience of consciousness. I mean, I can tell you that when you are feeling love, or have the experience of love, there's oxytocin in your brain. Okay, but that's not the experience of love. Or if I ask people right now to imagine a sunset on the ocean, they see a picture, and in the brain there's electrochemical activity that correlates to the picture, but we don't know where that picture is, and that's part of our experience. So that's called the hard problem in consciousness, for which we don't right now have an explanation in science, and we don't even have an actually model for it. So it's a fundamental problem because life is about being conscious, right? So we don't have an explanation, and the only way we can explore who am I is by exploring my stuff, which requires contemplative meditation, which requires observing my thoughts, the images in my consciousness, asking myself questions like who am I, what's my purpose, or is there a purpose, what gives me meaning. These are questions that the scientific method does not have, and it's fine.
Doesn't claim that.
And it's fine, right? Because that's the